afternoon. How's everybody doing?
Great.
Good. Well, welcome to 2024. I won't say Happy New Year. That's going to be a shocking phrase. I am your new chairman of Go Virginia, and Jeff Stupensky is your vice chair. Happy to be here, right?
Correct.
And we are going to try to operate and manage an efficient meeting. Go Virginia, I think, has done a really good job, at least in our region, building a lot of partnerships down in our area. I really appreciate being part of this organization. So I'll do my best as your chair to keep Billy Beal's tradition of moving things forward in place. First order of business is roll call. Sarah, would you call the roll, please?
Yes. Dr. Derek Aday. John Anzavino.
Here.
Billy Beal. Taryn Bryce Rowland. Renee Daniels. Here. Bruce Davis.
Here.
Jackie Davis. Here. Jan Urquhart. Here. Val Folds. Joel Griffin.
Here.
Lisa Hull. Here. Dr. Shannon Kennedy. Here. Kim McClellan. Here. Rob Portell.
Here.
Jeff Sapersky.
Here.
Lindsay Watson. Linda Worrell. Here. And Kimberly Young. Here. That is a quorum.
And we do have some members participating remotely, is that correct?
The two that signed up early are not on, but if they do come on, we should probably go ahead and read that in case they come in late.
Okay, so pursuant to Code of Virginia Title 2.2 Administration of Government, Chapter 37, the Virginia Freedom of Information Act, 2.2 3708.2, meetings held to electronic communication means following provisions apply to all governing bodies, and that's they need to notify us in advance. And notice has been given to the Region 6 chair, myself, 3 working days prior to this meeting that the following members are participating from the remote location that is not open to the public for the following reasons. Karen Bryce Rowland, due to temporary or permanent disability or other medical condition that prevents physical attendance. And Val Folds, meeting locations more than 60 miles from the principal residence. And we also have Bill Britton participating. Correct?
Correct.
Okay. We have a motion to so moved.
Second.
So all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, well, we now have a larger field. Public involvement, anybody who wishes. Well, we welcome public participation at any time. I don't think we've ever had it.
No.
Well, we will.
That's
You need to say that, Dave. Okay, consent agenda, which is an action item, is approval of the October 23rd, 2023 minutes. Hope you have all had an opportunity to review those. Any additions, corrections, or amendments to the motion, to the minutes? Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Rob. We have a motion second to approve the minutes of the October 23rd, 2023 meeting. Any discussion? By saying aye. Any opposed? Well, please note, I'm not voting, but I am approving. Okay. Okay, our first item of serious business is presentation Talent Pathways Initiative by Mason Bishop. Mason,
Great.
welcome. Glad you can be here today.
Thank you. I was asking Ian if I should stand or sit, and it sounds like it might be easier for me to sit. That's for everybody, or I can do whatever you prefer. I have a PowerPoint.
Yes.
Is that?
I'm not sure why it's not.
While that's being pulled up, let me just say, I can't believe here we are at the end of this. Year went fast, and it's been a fun journey. I've truly enjoyed, and I want to first appreciate Ian and Jackie for their leadership, but also I know this is a very important report for not only informing all of you about the investments going forward. But there's some things happening at the federal level right now with federal legislation around the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act, as well as short-term Pell authorization that in the coming year, if passes, is going to infuse local areas like yours with a lot of federal funds for education and training through, frankly, Jackie's board, as well as community colleges with short-term Pell opportunities. So knowing what direction to head in with regard to training and education investments, I think is really important. So we've done this with an eye toward that continuously. A couple things before I get into some of the slides. Obviously, our methodology, we tried to have a very comprehensive methodology, which integrated both quantitative and Bureau of Labor Statistics, federal resources. I guess you could say quantitative data sources that scrape job postings and other kinds of data. So we actually tried to utilize as many as possible to get the most information. On the qualitative side, we conducted interviews, individual interviews. Review in this room, I recognize it. Round tables. Those were really interesting because it brought together groups of different nice and then also we did some different surveys and other kinds of things. So we really tried to pull in qualitative data as possible. And the important part about qualitative data is it really informs and gives you the nuances and understanding. And you'll see in here, I'm going to talk to you about some things that really those interviews and those roundtables really helped me. And I'm going to be frank, a lot of the information we gleaned in here, I have an opportunity of working on the federal level around WIOA reforms and things like that. I get asked by congressional staff to come and visit from time to time and give a perspective. And one of the nice things, I'm just going to give a little personal anecdote here, is that because you allow me to participate in activities like this, I learn a lot on the ground. And I'm here to tell you, in Washington, D.C., this will come as no surprise. When they're making policy, a lot of times they don't have the on-the-ground perspective. And I actually had a particular meeting with some Senate staff about 3 or 4 months ago, and they were asking me just basic questions, and I was sort of riffing. And a lot of what I was learning here in this region, I was giving them some perspectives on small businesses and AI and automation, some observations. I'm sitting there asking myself, am I helping these folks at all? And I would ask them, is this being helpful? Oh yeah, this is really helpful, Mason. And I went back to my house thinking about how's that helpful? And it made me realize that it's because they don't get the on the ground perspective a lot of times. And so the fact that I'm able, Ian, to work on projects like this, I think really hopefully helps not only you in terms of reports like this, but helps you in terms of federal policy and the things that I can then take and hopefully influence in a positive way for all of you. So anyway, with that, we'll go ahead and get into the report. Next slide. So again, the purpose of the report really, from our perspective, we wanted to look at the demand for labor in key sectors, the supply of labor in key sectors, understand the workforce needs of regional businesses, and identify the skills and training needed to match workers more effectively to jobs. That's really a summation. Obviously, there were 3 priority regional clusters: aquaculture in the northern neck of the peninsula, Fredericksburg region, and real quickly, one of the limitations we face, but we tried to address this a little bit in the report. IT is a perfect example. The way Go Virginia defines these industries is a bit of a challenge for teams like us, because they define it somewhat narrow. Industrial classification system, I think that's the right acronym. Sectors and industries are defined, and they're defined broadly at 2 digits, as well as 6 further individualized specifications. Well, the way Go Virginia at the state level defines these is somewhat limiting. If you take IT, for example, were dealing with a few months ago. We were having interviews and getting all kinds of information on employer needs in IT. Looking at the data, the quantitative data wasn't telling a story of a need in IT for skilled workers. And we figured out that was because somewhat of the way Go Virginia defined it. And IT is a perfect example because, as you know, IT workers work throughout a number of different industries and sectors. So one of the things we try to do in the full report, when you have an opportunity to look at that, is talk about these in the context of Go Virginia, but we did try to broaden the discussion within the Talent Pathways report to recognize that, you know, here's some other ways to look at IT industry. And hopefully provide some helpful information. So next slide. So real quickly, we ended up with 3 themes, 5 strategic recommendations that I think probably consider the lens by which, as you're looking at investments going forward, Virginia Region 6, and hopefully these are this lens by which it's going theme number 1 was really finding the right talent and again, none of these are going to be earth-shattering necessarily, but it's helpful to coalesce around them. One is clearly you're challenged with having just enough workers, period. I mean, that's kind of everywhere in the United States right now. But you also have a smaller working age population, so a portion of the overall population. Then obviously, once you look at that, then the availability of the actual skilled workers for the priority cluster employment. Theme 2, and this is one that I think is really important, and one that I'll be honest, I always call them light bulb moments. You've had projects like this, now get a moment doing something, and this is one not only again that I think is really critical for you, but one that I've actually started broadening out and having more national discussions about. Because I think a lot of times what happens is we talk about workforce development and training and education, and we tend to default to the large employers. We think, you know, in your case, yes, largest partners, but partly put us in Amazon, kind of track business into an area you think of. But the reality is our economy is still mostly made up of small businesses. And they're frankly a lot harder to serve when you talk about skilled talent. And in specific talk here in Region 6 is that a lot of times small businesses individually don't have enough skill need and so it's more program being ramped up or something like that. So you have to think through what are the methods by which we band together the use of small businesses on a great scale in order to train skilled talent strategies. The other thing about small business that really, again, was a huge light bulb moment for me was a couple of indicators. Here's the challenge we're having. Our starting salary is $6,450. And the people we are seeing are but they lack work experience, they lack educational attainment, etc. And they're coming to us expecting 18, 19, 20. I had one employer tell me that they put some on-ramp process, and then we're getting to sign up their checking account with direct deposit. And when the person saw how much, I can't work for that. I need at least 25 an hour because the individual had purchased a really expensive truck that was sitting out in the parking lot and needed to make the payments. And the business went through that whole 2 to 3 day on-ramp process and then lost the person. Again, somebody with a high school education and lack of work experience with an expectation. I had a business or two ask me, saying, "This is great. Just not afford, so to speak, to pay somebody at 18, 19, 20 and then go to McDonald's and work for that when they don't have the productivity that's needed for that employer to justify that level of wage." So theme 2 for me was a really big issue, I think, permeating the whole Talent Pathways discussion. And then 3 obviously is another interesting dynamic, was that how many people actually live in this region or work inside the region. It's still where people cross the river to use or wherever too. So in one example we use there is 56% of workers living in planning district 16. So that just creates a real challenge.
Where is that?
What's that?
16?
Yes.
Where?
Fredericksburg.
Yeah.
It's worse for us, bro.
It's worse.
More like 70%.
Yeah. Yeah, we looked at each planning district. And we pulled some data from all of you, frankly, plus we had a tool that we paid some money. Okay, so let's talk about the strategic recommendations. Next slide. Number one is, again, for some of you, this may not seem those shadows, but I think they're really important. And I think they're fundamental. So the first is sector partnership framework. And again, this gets to the fact that there's so many small businesses. And we heard through some of the roundtables as we were talking about issues, employers, literally, we had one roundtable where a couple of the employers looked at each other and said, we need to be talking more. We need to be coordinating more because they're hitting a lot of the same things, but they feel like they got to address it independently and that sort of thing. And I really think going forward, one of the real strengths you all have is the relationship Jackie's board and this board has working together. I strongly recommend, and if you look at any of the literature around sector partnerships and sector strategies, which it seems to be one of the only workforce development methodologies that has some evidence of working, that's a problem to have. This for months. It's like, Jackie, there's a real opportunity for you here, and you need to continue to coordinate in your boards around bringing employers together and driving everything you do through these sector partnership frameworks. So that's the first strategic recommendation. Then second, number two.
Audio issues.
Oh, okay. I'm not sure whether
Yeah.
it's easier for you to turn.
No, you're fine. I was trying
I'm
to
sorry.
I thought you were changing the thermostat.
Was
No. People are having trouble hearing.
expanding creative, and I use the word creative purposely, work-based learning alternatives is a primary means of improving worker skills and supporting small businesses. I think of all the training modalities you have, this is the one, and this isn't just about registered apprenticeship. I'm gonna be real blunt. I know registered apprenticeship is the fancy thing, the shiny thing for the day. But like I always tell people, the problem with registered apprenticeship, it's a model that asks the employer to conform to it versus the model conforming to what the employer needs. So I think you utilize all the tools in your work-based learning toolbox. That could include on-the-job training, paid internships. It can include non-registered apprenticeships and registered apprenticeships both. But really look for creative ways to help, especially small businesses, take on some of the initial costs of entry for lower skilled workers to gain work experience and to gain some level of productivity gains through that on-the-job training or whatever the work-based learning method is, so that then the smaller employers can then start to justify higher wages and help those people end up on an upward mobility kind of scale. So really there are, I say at the bottom there are really two opportunities here. One is it helps the employers potentially with some of that entry level. It's kind of a creative way to help entry level wage issues that small businesses have in particular here. But secondly, it also is a way for people to gain work experience as well as greater skills. Strategic recommendation B was, since it flips here, is aligning and supporting stackable credentials tied directly to high demand. This really, we focus on the industry recognized credentials. So in IT, it's and again, we heard from the IT employers, they said it's credentials. It's the CompTIA A++, and we talk about some of these different kinds of credentials. I actually found a study that just came providing groups. Individuals who get stackable credentials when the first credential is less than an associate's degree. So not that we shouldn't be putting people on associate and bachelor degree pathways, but making sure we're putting people on pathways that have a stackable credential framework as part of that associate or bachelor degree educational pathway is something we strongly recommend, especially for IT, but it's true even for manufacturing and even some opportunities in aquaculture. Strategic recommendation 3, and I actually put this also reforms. I think at some point, I think there's a better than 50-50 chance this year. I may be being naive, but it's always interesting to me in election years, Congress likes to have people like to get reelected. So I do think, and the House has bipartisan, on a bipartisan basis, one of the few things, WIOA reform and short-term Pell. There's talk that the Senate will bring a bill on a bipartisan basis. So there's a lot of bipartisan chatter right now around these. And so I think by setting up these frameworks and by knowing what kinds of industry employment you want to help people focus in on with information such, I think there's real opportunities for you under a sector partnership type of framework to really strategically, hopefully new infusion of federal resources, give people individual training accounts and help them to go and shop for these kinds of sector. And number 5 is, again, this is sort of a broader recommendation, but when we were working on the report, I sort of felt like we didn't do enough focus on the different types of populations. So this bit later in the process, but we pulled quite a bit of data that will be in the report around how do you tap every single, try to address your skilled needs. We look a little in the report around high school graduates, how many are coming out, each year veterans, older workers. The older worker, non-traditional worker, of course, is a bigger thing, especially where you have a region with a lot smaller working age population, overall population partner, maybe on a part-time basis or other kinds of things. And of course, each one of these. So again, try to put some data in the report around what are your skill talent pools that you have to work with. I won't go through the rest of these slides. I'll put them in there. The rest of the slides really are these all are in the larger this is the overall, again, it's defined by the Go Virginia NAICS. Obviously, if you broaden it out, you would have a lot more potentially employers in particular. What we try to do is produce both data as well as actual visualizations of where are the employers and where are the education opportunities. You'll see some red outside of your region, and those are where we felt that there were remote learning opportunities that outside of the region. But you see, it's kind of interesting. Yeah, of course.
So, go back to this slide. Aquaculture is actually significantly higher per capita revenue.
Again, and we talk about this in the limit, all the limitations listed, it's because of the way, so it's how you define aquaculture. Talk about this. Which are defined now, it's frankly. It doesn't include, for instance, the kind of clean water or wastewater type of connection to aquaculture. That's not included in the current Go Virginia. We added that, some of that discussion into the overall.
Marine maritime is not in there either.
Talk about that. So when you, and I will tell you, I told my team, I said, we're going to get some questions from some folks when they look at some of this saying, why that doesn't look right to us and stuff. So that's why we try to, in the full report, really address some of that, because we know you're going to see some things and be like, wait a minute. Because if you look at, frankly, some of the job charts. Again, like you look at IT, and I'm just telling you, if you look at IT as defined by Go Virginia, which is the IT and data centers NAICS, you start looking at the number of jobs, and I'm gonna be blunt, it doesn't look that impressive. It doesn't look like it justifies. But then, so what we did is we broadened it out to include other IT, where IT workers are working, and all of a sudden you can see there's large demand. So again, we tried to stay true to Go Virginia because that was important, but also, so that's why it's gonna be a little bit more of a limited definition when you see some of the data here. So
Certainly back to aquaculture.
yeah,
Difficult to get information from those involved in aquaculture.
yes, no, that's and it gets, again, the challenge with aquaculture as defined, and you're going to see in this report is that it's very, very small firms. It's mostly individual proprietors, or maybe they have 3 or 4. Now, when you start looking at some of the raising of the seed and the hatchery stuff, culture as defined here, the reality is that it's mostly manual labor, to be frank. It's not high wage employment. And it's either manual labor or we're going to sort of automation. And so we need higher skill. There's not a lot of kind of like middle skill in between in aquaculture. But again, defining it more broadly, we talk about a little bit in the report, like if you start to look at aquaculture in the context of things like clean water, some of these other occupations, then it's a much, if you look at it more in the context of coastal resiliency, let me use that term, versus aquaculture, it's a lot more of a robust picture in terms of jobs, in terms of skills, and in terms of employment overall. So I think, with VIMS and some of those other organizations, we had some very, very good interviews, and as part of the roundtables too, where we were able to get a pretty so us working on this back in June, we worked on a grant for Jackie that she applied for from the Department of Labor, a planning grant around climate resiliency and coastal resiliency, which she just got awarded. She won. It was a very competitive thing, so we're pretty excited. So part of this is this work, in terms of the aquaculture part of this, we'll be able to broaden out some of that work through Jackie's coastal resiliency planning grant she got too. So learn even.
Did you find on aquaculture sort of a barbell? They're either really small or really big without much in the middle? Did you find that?
I would say they're really small and small. There's really no big. And really, I would say the largest employers are going to be more on the manufacturing side. If you start to find it with Dahlgren and Nestle, and what they do in some of those, that's where you're going to get maybe larger employers. Even IT, I would say those are mostly, I would call them mid-sized to smaller firms in IT, really. Not a lot, there's not like large data center type workforce in the region.
Well, data centers.
Yeah.
So, but I do think what's interesting is I'm a student, not even back in an envelope.
Yeah.
So each agriculture worker produces about $300,000 worth of revenue versus 200,000 plus or minus IT and less than that, roughly the same with manufacturing. So that's a very interesting number. Is that because of a higher mechanization versus what's going on that?
I don't know. That's a good question. I'm not sure I have
When you think about the fact that these are manual labor.
Yeah.
That's an interesting outcome.
Yeah.
Because manual labor doesn't typically pay as much as.
Yeah.
Would
But if
omega
this is-
protein be reflected in that?
What's that?
Would omega protein be reflected in that aquaculture number
I might
potentially?
have to look.
Very,
I can't imagine that they would
large.
be, more of the would be almost manufactured.
Yeah.
It's an oil, fish oil refinery.
sure. Well,
They don't do
Yeah.
any oysters. No, and
Interesting.
it's all wild caught.
So if we go to, just, let's click on the aquacultures. Yeah, so you can see here again, well, there's your employers, some of your employers right there. Well, there you go, Bevan's Oyster has 85.
Omega's
looks
not
like
there.
the-
Ocean Harvester, Omega's not there.
Let's click to keep clicking through. Yeah, click, keep going. Here's IT. So then let's go to manufacturing. Let's stop.
Government in any of this anywhere?
No, no.
Government's its own NAICS.
So what percentage?
Government contractor potentially could be in here. If you're a information and data center code NAICS coded firm that's doing government contracting, yes. Yeah, that you would be captured in this.
but government is still
But-
by far the largest employer.
Oh, it
Yeah.
has to be in this region.
And of course, the other big one that's not included in this from a skilled talent perspective is healthcare, clearly, right? I mean, healthcare, huge employment. And
That's far out.
yeah.
Low skill,
All
high skill.
throughout, yeah. So, and then just, I think, anyway, so this is the asset map part of our work that we embedded within the full report. So, and again, tried to look at all the different programs
Can
and
you go back?
some different notes. And some of the online programs. Just some notes here, education training programs include those outside the target region, but recruit students from within the target region. Gazelle was I mentioned that other thing we paid for to do some commuting patterns, look at some employment. And then the data was primarily pulled and we updated it, we pulled it earlier, but then what you see in the report was in September and October. Then here are the definitions of what the industry cluster NAICS are. So you can see if you look at aquaculture, there's only 4 NAICS code. It's finfish, fishing, shellfish, other marine and seafood product prep and packaging.
Really impressed that you can see it.
Well, the good news is my distance vision, I had LASIK back in 06 and it's stuck with me so far. Reading's a whole different story though. I've gotten to the point where I can't read.
He's probably got
So,
it
yeah.
memorized.
No. But so anyway, that again, we try to put all those kind of definitional things so anybody can look and see what's behind the numbers. So that is a very high level synopsis. Okay, so yeah, here's the climate resiliency. So yeah, here we go. I forgot about that. I put this on the end. So this is where an example where we tried to broaden out aquaculture and have that larger discussion of climate resiliency and coastal resiliency. So once we defined it more broadly, you can see we go to 259 employers and over 87, almost 8,800 people. And, you can start to pull in some like Lish, Stafford County Water. So you can start to look at it a little bit differently
So
too.
how are all these people climate resilient?
Just doing different, I don't know, I'd have to go back and look, but that's just some of, we tried to broaden the definition a little bit to see if they have particular initiatives or something that are impacting. A lot of it's around clean water. So just different ways of looking.
This could be more like a definition that Region 5, council defines water technologies. To this point, it's kind of a broader. So it sounds like that's the type of things that Region 5 would be trying to capture.
That's not the way I think of climate resilience.
Yeah, no, well, that's the thing,
I
there's
mean,
no
that is
standard
an-
definition, so it's kind of like, hey, get a head together, what makes the most sense?
Anyway, so that's. So hopefully we produce something you all can be proud of. That's the goal.
When do we actually see it?
Jackie, she's getting them from the printer either today or tomorrow. I know they're gonna be
Yeah, so,
available
so you'll have physical copies
tomorrow. I think.
today,
Oh, today
too,
she is,
yeah.
okay, yeah.
And we'll send you digital copy.
We
didn't wanna
did both.
overload
We-
you.
I hired a graphic design firm that produced, a printable and a PDF and a.
So will data be available for separately downloading and reconfiguring? In other words, can we get the underlying data sets? Okay.
Absolutely.
Joel has his hand raised online.
Joel? Joel?
Yes, hi there. So thanks for asking the question. So sort of going through the briefing, I felt like there was either some incorrect data or maybe some unintentional omissions. I don't know, but we have 6 billion square feet of data centers going in. That alone is supposed to create 10,000 construction jobs over the next 3 years. We can't I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I can barely find an HVAC repairman, much less a construction company. We have, you know, the extension of the hot lanes, the Virginia Rail, like major state construction projects that are coming to the area, the VA hospital, not just for construction, but also for healthcare workers. These are massive initiatives that are going to necessitate a major influx of outside the external region and even external from Virginia workers to be here moving into the area. So then that affects all of your hotel and workforce housing needs. So, you know, your restaurant and retail is going to go through the roof. I saw on one slide there was about 300, maybe 350 contractors, but in Stafford alone, there's nearly 1,000 government contractors. These are small businesses that employ, you know, 5 to 10 people. Granted, they're not General Dynamics and Mantech, but that is a major financial factor for the Stafford region. So I'm just trying to coalesce how all the data is coming together, because these initiatives, these projects, these are milestones. I mean, these are region changers. And I wasn't sure that they were being accounted for.
So I'll make two comments. One is, one thing you have to remember about Go Virginia, like it or not like it, and Ian will correct me if I don't state this exactly right, is Go Virginia defines industries based upon exports. Isn't that correct? Isn't that?
It has to be a traded sector.
Traded sector. So construction jobs are not part of Go Virginia. Healthcare jobs aren't part of Go Virginia unless they're part of a sector that's a trade sector. So all the examples that Joel mentioned around construction jobs and HVAC, our report doesn't address any of that. And that's again how we define it. Same thing with hotel, all of the hospitality, the government contractors. It just depends. If they're a government contractor that is defined under the Go Virginia NAICS, we captured it. If they're a government contractor that's not defined under that, but again, in the full report, we try to address all these, and we try to. Jackie has some good timing. So Joel, it's not that we're purposely leaving it out, but it's that it's not part of Go Virginia defined industries. They're not part of the 3 industries or the 3 sector priority clusters, I should say correctly, that we were tasked with looking. So it's just a caveat that everybody has to remember when you're talking true talent pathways. We're looking at just a snapshot of certain talent pathways of the overall talent needs and pathways within the geographic region itself. It's just important to always keep that in context.
So where does it all come together?
That's a great question. I mean, it would all come together if you Jackie, whoever funded a larger full, like, what does our geographic region look like just with all employment? You'd have to look at all
Somebody do with that at the state level.
at state level or something like that.
I think that some of our projects have kind of have brought some of it together, so I think that the project that Shannon and RCC had approved, their new diesel mechanic, HVAC technician training center, I think kind of brings a lot of this to bear. So I think some of our projects have addressed it. There was, and Billy, maybe you can speak on this, but there was at one point before the budget was pushed off last year. When we started this, we thought that there was gonna be some money at the state level for talent pathways. That would be a separate pot of money from our regional per capita allocation that was stricken from the budget when it was finally approved. So we're hoping that the next budget, I don't know if you know if it's in there, but hoping that it was going to
It
be.
was not introduced by the governor. It was not. Not to say it can't be in the final budget, but it was not introduced by the governor's budget to include that implementation piece of DPI. Now, of course, you can still implement with per capita. We've opened up the apparatus for competitive, so that single region, there's a per capita.
I think Shannon has.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Mason, I just wanted to comment on the strategic recommendation number 2, which I fully agree with. But you've pointed out that we have small businesses and we need to work on sector partnerships. In order for small business to have an intern, when they don't, it's a real big problem. Because they can't do the onboarding, they don't know how to manage it. And they're the only person that can do a job and they can't take the time. So it's just something I want us to consider is that while they want it, that they don't have the mechanism to do the supervising and to understand that. So it's just a point.
You're exactly right, and it's why, you know, when it comes to the themes, I really wanted to make sure I explicitly put those themes up front in the report. Because everything has to be really evaluated through those lens, I think, those different lens, and it's just a challenge and a reality. But again, for me, it was very helpful to talk to and hear what their challenges are and realize, I mean, the reality is I think COVID accelerated the challenges for small businesses because COVID inherently caused the larger national businesses to be able to raise their wages, the Walmarts, the Amazons, all of that. And the small business just can't keep up with that wage inflation, frankly. And I'm not saying I have all the answers. That's y'all's jobs to figure out what the answers are. But I think it's important to just always keep that in the forefront of your thinking as you're looking strategically at your investment portfolio, et cetera, is what are those needs and then what are those realities? Is there a way you can help them find the sweet spot, so to speak, of how that helps? Shannon, you're right.
Yes. Didn't we at one time, a long time ago, or maybe it was and you may remember this, we talked about either Germana or UMW or RC, all of us getting together and coming up with a template for small businesses to use on how to do something like that.
Yes, so that's happening actually. So Antoinette Jenkins, which I know many of you have met, some of you have met, is we hired her with funds from VTOP, Virginia Talent Plus Opportunity. They created the small and mid-sized business toolkit. We found that. Styles from your office. So there are Lisa's on the calls where and so that's the Rappahannock Region Work and Learn Collaborative. So that is actually in process. It's moving forward. We have our region, Go Virginia Region 6, we have 27 employers who've now completed those, the training and who are now eligible for the funding, which funds, depending on the size, half or all, 100 to, or 50% to 100% of the cost of wages for an intern, as well as they Go Virginia, I'm sorry, not Go Virginia, VTOP at the state level engaged with an employment firm that will help those businesses to write the positions, help hire and onboard interns in there. So work-based learning specifically interns into their organizations. So that work, yes, I was gonna mention that to see if that came across your desk or your, in any of your work, if anyone mentioned that.
But by the time we met Antoinette, it was towards the end and
Oh.
they were wrapping up there.
Got it.
So that's the reason why it wasn't.
Got it. Yeah, so that work is happening, it's moving. And you'll be happy to know Region 6 is actually ahead of the game in the state by far, which is great. So good for us.
We also funded the chamber project, which is
Right.
around work-based.
I just want to offer, because of data questions, other things. If any of you or Subset or Ian, if you want to have a separate Zoom call at some point with our data, with my team, and just talk through and ask questions and say, you know, this, I mean, I have no problem, you know, anything we can do to facilitate your understanding of all of this is, you know, I'll offer that if that's ever.
Thank you. Any further questions, comments, discussion? All right, let's move on to new business. Region 6 letter to the state board regarding the JLOC study. I hope you've all had an opportunity to review the JLOC study, which will be back at JLOC. If you're not familiar with them, there's a lot of investigative and work for the Commonwealth, and very good work. Really. There are some things that the board, peers and staff thought needed to be addressed. And beyond that,
Sure, so, and Billy, you can chime in whenever, but yeah, so staff for all the regions kind of have been meeting a little bit outside of our meetings with DHCD. We did after the JLARC study was published. We talked about, we drafted a letter that John and I think Jeff as well, or just John, sending to the state board with some suggestions, some recommendations on the study that we thought the state board has already made strides in this effort, so there's already some work there. There was already some talks about things that we had discussed, like healthcare. So that discussion came up like last September. So, and that wasn't really in the JLARC study in the report, but the letter from the regions was a little more succinct, so we wanted to build upon that. I think the most important thing, so there are basically three things here. We'll go over the study at the end, so if there's anything that you guys want to add. There weren't a ton of recommendations. They're basically like 5 slides each with a recommendation. I think these three are the most pertinent that we as a council could recommend to the state board that they should implement. And I think this last one, so there was a recommendation that there be a citizen representative from each region. So Joe Wilson was our representative on the state board. He's no longer on the state board. I think this is a place where we sorely lack. I can't speak for the other regions. Some of the other regions are very well represented, perhaps overly represented, but we are not at all. So very strongly really wanted to emphasize that point. And then the other two, and this kind of dovetails with the application that we have today. So there was a recommendation in the JLARC report that, so now almost, well, all Go Virginia projects, they're analyzed holistically, but the main metric is job creation. That was kind of the thrust of the program. So the report advocated for, in addition to that, assessing an increase in workforce credentials because it has become such a heavy workforce development program, and then also general economic development activities. So we wanted to emphasize that. I think in particular in some of our more rural areas, the total job creation is going to be a little less in other parts of the state. So I think it's important to emphasize that. And that really kind of leads into the 3-year and 5-year ROI. So the 3-year, 5-year ROI is tied into the job creation. So there was a recommendation to rely less upon that and maybe only leverage that for larger Go Virginia requests. So basically, the process would be if you guys approve this letter, it'll go to the state board and be in the packet for their March meeting.
And you wanted further discussion until you have a chance to brief us on the JLARC report, or would you like us to act now?
Yeah, we can have discussion now. There aren't that many recommendations beyond kind of what I've highlighted here. There are a few others that are more applicable to the state board and DHCD. So I think we can have that discussion now.
Letter. We talk about the JLARC report. Yeah. Yeah, here we go.
Sure. Yeah. So if you would go start at slide 18. So I'm gonna go like primarily over recommendations. The main finding was that it seems like Go Virginia is working to improve economic development in the state, is definitely working to improve regional collaboration in the state. So these are the recommendations, again, that are kind of a little more applicable to DHCD and the tracking of projects. So I think we all know that, okay, we have a program, we have workforce credentials tied to it. Tying that to job creation, tracking that becomes pretty difficult. I think anybody who's involved with colleges, community colleges, high schools, that's a difficult metric to track. There's really not an apparatus for that. And most of the projects being tied to job creation, that is an issue. So that's that recommendation. Again, that's a little more applicable to the program overall and DHCD and what that tracking apparatus looks like. So we'll go to slide 24. So I did not include this in our letter. I think it's really important. But we included this in the letter that we sent from all the regions. This is around match. So the idea of eliminating the local match and then reducing the match from 1-to-1 to 2-to-1. And I think there's currently some legislation around that now.
There's a bill that's been introduced that would reduce it to 2-to-1.
Yeah.
Because right now the code requires 1-to-1, or the board has the ability to waive it to 2-to-1 if it's actually extraordinary economic opportunity. So I think the idea was they're introducing a bill to just straight up reduce it to 2-to-1 with not having to go through that.
Does that include the local match? Do you know?
Local's not in the board, or is not in the code, so that's something.
Oh, right.
I'll, at the very end of this, I can kind of give you guys an update of where we're at with all this stuff too, so I don't want to.
Yep, that'd be helpful, yep.
But we'll talk about that too.
Yeah, so
Bob, did you have a question?
I have a question. So the reason to have a match is so the localities have skin in the game. And this isn't just a freebie you get anytime you have an idea. So I just want to challenge the idea that you would eliminate it. I know some of you would disagree with that probably, but it certainly eliminates frivolity in requests. You have to have skin in the game. So I want to go on record saying that.
That's a good thought. I having been in local government, knowing local elected officials, they'll
Free money, and
free money.
money you gotta work for.
Right.
It's also seemed to me that on some of the applications we've had, it's really not too high of a bar for them to do the match. I mean, it's very seldom ever financial.
Yeah.
You know, they can do in kind and come up with something that they do.
Yeah.
And all it does is really document participation. So I think you make a good point.
The only caveat, so for workforce, which are most of our projects, I think that in-kind is easier. And we don't do, site development's not as much of an area of excellence, let's say, for Go Virginia as it is for the Virginia Business Ready Sites program. We just have less money. Developing sites takes a lot of money. We do find a niche with smaller sites and in planning. And you need cash for those. So the in-kind that we use for local match for other projects, we can't leverage. So when we have site development projects, it can become difficult to reach a local match threshold. And we met that with our West Point project, which is a planning grant. And is supportive of the coastal resiliency economy that we're creating in the Middle Peninsula through the Go Virginia funded project. So that would be the only caveat I would make to that. And I think that there's a lot of federal money too, either directly tied to site development or tangentially tied to site development. So I think that's an area where it's kind of unique.
Well, maybe we could recommend they differentiate. If site development is really all that different in its approach.
Sure.
Rather than simply eliminate it.
I think that's not a bad idea. Are there any other areas where you see it as a challenge?
No, yeah, always. I mean, it's not like, especially as we get into the Northern Neck Middle Peninsula, you know, if we have a large project, the requirement now is, but 20% of the total match has to be local. So, and then once we get into a project, so when we put that on paper and we apply to the state board, it can make sense and it almost always works out. But Sarah can tell you, when we get into a project and we start applying match to something and folks need to pull on that match because they need to qualify the match before they draw the money down, that's where it becomes complicated. And in the more rural localities, it's just difficult. They just don't have, they're not as fiscally, they don't have, I mean, it's obvious, they don't have the tax base that other localities, particularly in the northern part of the region, have. So I think, you know, it's an issue that we've overcome, but it's always going to be an issue.
Specifically with school divisions.
What?
With school divisions, if a school division is an applicant, it is difficult for them to come up with the local action.
It's very difficult for us to
Yeah.
do. Our proposal, that you wouldn't see a proposal from us.
Yeah, well, yeah, I was gonna say, we work so closely with the community colleges and it, you know, if we plan to implement any of the TPI work, creating pathways, we need that linear connection between K through 12 community colleges and colleges. And most of the money that they're coming with is not local. I mean, it's community college, so.
So is that the definition of the money or what? In other words, if
The
for the match,
local.
you have. But for the match, you said it's not local, mostly local.
There,
It's
yeah,
state, it's
yeah.
Our funds are state funds.
And does that count?
No,
No,
Maybe that should also be part of the conversation, what money counts. I mean, sometimes it's just a will, living in a very, very small county, it's an issue of will. You know,
I agree, sure, yeah.
And budgeting too, because it has to be budgeted
Yeah.
the year prior to an actual project, and it's very hard to put it in the budget if there's not an actual project, and then, so it's an inability to pivot too.
Well, and I think
Just going, looking for solutions. Would it be possible that even if the state has the stricter guidelines, or in this case, the more lenient guidelines, this board can then have its own prioritization and you demand a higher unless there are circumstances? Does that make sense?
It does. It makes sense, but is that something where we can do under the code? Under,
We have, other regions that have done that, like, for example, there, let's change it now, in the earlier days, some councils were worried about, obligating, too much money in one project, so they kind of lowered the threshold, and that was never, again, Virginia State Board requirement, it was a council requirement, so, if the apparatus was opened where we didn't require, where the state board did not require, local match, you still have to have participating localities. They have to be meaningfully participating somehow, some way, and show that. But you guys could have something hypothetical, obviously. I don't know if that's gonna happen, but yes, you could have something where, hey, you know, we still see value in having skin in the game with the local governments, and they need to pony up 10% or 20% for that case.
Well, and you all have the discretion to approve or reject projects, so you can, that discretion is pretty, well, it's broad enough to include that in the requirements.
it's important for them to know, kind of get the, what the match requirement is for certain projects, that it's just not there, and then we make a discretionary decision based upon whether or not the match exists. They need to know that up front. So how do we best attack that from the standpoint of these recommendations to JLARC, the JLARC study?
Well, first of all, I think for us internally, if we want to differentiate, if we want to have a higher threshold, and this is all kind of conjecture because we don't know what's going to happen with local match, we can adopt our own policy and use that when we have applications.
I do want to, I feel like bring up historical kind of, I think there are a few of us that I remember from the early, when we were trying to get the money out the door as well, because we were a little more stringent here, than perhaps. Especially, higher ed, it is challenging because even though we can come with match, it doesn't count. And so, because it's state, so if you're kind of leveraging, you can't leverage a state funds against state funds. And there are other ways that localities can participate. So I just want to kind of put that in as food for thought for us as a group.
Could you leave it loosely, again, like, you know, local match requirement would be a plus in receiving a favorable disposition on a request or something, so there's not a hard forward, hard cap, whatever you want to refer to, but it's like strongly encouraged as far as, but I would agree, my gut is, I don't see, at least the localities I'm familiar with, going, you know, bonkers with this. We're trying to fan the fires more than trying to put a stop on it, would be my opinion.
But at the same time, I don't disagree, having worked in rural communities, that there's a, and I'm not speaking about higher education, I'm talking about local governments. So you know this, Jim, too. Well, you see a free grant out there, regardless of what the quality of your application is or how well thought out your idea is, you'll throw it up against the wall and see if it'll stick. It'll get funded. That's not always the best way to approach having a grant program, because it clogs mechanism with applications of low quality and puts a burden, I think, burden on the staff and the boards who are approving. I would suggest that maybe we consider giving some type of bonus for local government initiated projects for those who have a local match, which they're willing to contribute. I know right now that we're working with another county on, two other counties on a joint application. This is not very sophisticated, but it's a problem, and it meets the aquaculture definition of Go Virginia, in conjunction with processing of blue catfish. But if you're not familiar with blue catfish, they're an invasive species, they eat everything in their path. And we got the state tried to do that, as part of the last budget process, but all the money got whacked out during negotiations. So we're trying to get that back into the state budget, at the same time identifying where the processing goes. And we're asking a couple of other local governments to partner with our county and put up some money to, as kind of a match for the grant itself, just to show that we have a strong program. So I think that's where we may put our emphasis is on local government applications that are coming in. I'm sorry, this is kind of a hard setting.
Yeah.
This, it may be good for local governments to be able to have a bonus and be more competitive, and also know that they need to have some skin in the game with that match. And it doesn't have to be a significant amount. It doesn't have to be 50%, but I think they need to put something. Any additional thoughts on how we approach this?
The only thing I'd also say is that, there's in the governor's budget, there's a $28 million clawback of unobligated Go Virginia funds. There's an amendment to keep that money in, but so we should keep the conversation around, whether or not we should keep that in mind if we're having a conversation about making it stricter. Luckily, I think we have the second lowest balance of any other region. But that's a significant amount of money. And as we continue to carry that money over year to year, that could very easily be called back.
And to your point, that you said we have the second lowest balance, but that's not always been the case. When it was stricter, we read some of the least amount of our money that we were able to spend.
Well, we lost a chunk of money 2 years ago.
We did, yeah.
But even so, there's a principle involved, that's the way it turns out, right? Sometimes we don't have enough applicants for the money.
I think we probably talked around this one. There's further work to do on this. The letter at hand doesn't really reflect that discussion.
Does not,
But
no.
I think, Ian, it's something we need to put on your to-do list to think about, talk to us about, see what type of solution we can come up with that would encourage, and I think it's good to encourage even smaller local governments to begin to put some money into economic development as opposed to just talking about it. Because they talk a lot about it, and they want the jobs, they want the increased tax base, but they're not willing to put any money up against it to really go after it. And it helps them plan and helps them understand a little bit that there are funds out there, but they need to work a little bit to get those funds. As we've said, get some skin in the game. So if you work to that. So with that said,
I'd just like to add, I don't know that we had consensus on your thought, because I disagree. Just so, I know that you had a discussion, but we didn't, I disagree because of the challenges I know that we face trying to get proposals.
would you disagree with us discussing this further and coming up with?
No, absolutely. I just wanted to make sure we not say it as a foregone.
So, Mr. Chairman, could you maybe just take a straw vote on how many favor eliminating match completely versus those who do not? Just as a
Eliminating
principle.
I think, but I think we've got various matches here.
Yeah.
We can't deal with the higher education issue
Yeah.
as part of that. I think we're talking specifically about local governments.
Yeah.
So I think we give that some thought, we bring it back for some additional discussion at the end. And please feel free to contact Ian with any of your thoughts. But what we're talking about here, as this letter goes, secondary letter, which is going to the state, doesn't reflect that. And so what I would like to see is a motion to confirm that your thoughts are in accordance with this letter and the 3 points that are made, and that we should send that to the state. Yes.
So moved.
I actually would like to wordsmith a little bit.
Sure.
Yeah. So.
Let's get that under discussion. Let's forget the motion.
Second.
Yeah, motion, second. Okay, discussion.
I think a couple of these words could be a little bit better in the third bullet, ensure equal representation. I'm not sure that's, the word is equal. The reason for representations, I'm not sure it was intended to be equal, but I also think it's about content of representation. So that goes to the last line where we're talking economic plight of each region. And I would sort of like to suggest we change that to something on the order of understanding the unique economic attributes, needs, and aspirations of each region. Because I think what we want for opportunities.
And so
Attributes, needs, aspirations, and opportunities.
I'm understanding that you're offering that as an amendment to the motion.
Yeah, I'm more than happy to, I was part of the creative writing workshop in sixth grade.
And I don't quite know what the word is to substitute for equal, but somehow proper. What? Yeah. What I really want is fulsome. Something like that. Representative representation.
I'll just say, and we do have to, for the sake of time, move on, but I'll just say the reason I put that in there is because some folks, some regions, I said equal, because some do have 1, 2, 3, 4 people who are directly tied to the region or can speak in behalf of the region. And that's come into play recently in some of the projects. So if we get one person, other regions may still have 3 people, so it's, I'm okay with it. And that's, but the other, that was the key.
One quick question, so I know this is a Region 6 letter. Was there consensus among the region of your people in this, or is this exclusively our recommendations to the JR?
Yeah, so I think that the other regions were informally behind all these ideas. We had a call about this, but that letter that we signed in conjunction with them was solely primarily is probably a better word on the reduction of the total match, not talking about the local match, the reduction of match from 1 to 1 to 2 to 1. Total match
That was just that.
does not touch on the local, because as Billy said, that's not in code.
So this is our.
This is, yeah, this is our.
Okay. All right, we have a motion on the floor to amend the language to this letter. As stated by Rob. Do I have a second? Second. Okay, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, now the base motion, the original motion, do we have a motion to send this letter off to the state? Rob's motion on the floor, do we have a second? Jeff, thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Okay.
Enrolling in the creative writing process.
Pretty creative. All right, so I'm gonna try to get through these real quick. I think that
Full business.
it should, yeah, so I'm actually gonna do the second one first, so Sarah, if you could go to that, sorry. There may be a little bit of discussion on the first one, but we talked about the 8% administrative fee, us being able to charge that of applicants or of subgrantees. We're enabled by code to do that. We're one of the few regions that does not do that. That basically allows us to charge folks for the technical assistance that we give them in the creation of applications and grant administrations if they are awarded. The final, so there's this policy and then there's a memo. Hopefully you guys were able to read it, but it explains it a little more. So we can charge up to 8%, but we negotiate that with the applicants going in based on what we think the work will be. And then we have to submit that work. Sarah will be doing most of that work. We have to remit that in the form of remittances. So it is truly a reflection of hours worked in the project. So the motion would be to accept this policy so that we can charge the 8%. It's reflected in the application that we have on the table
That
today,
would be up to 8%.
up to 8%.
So for me to understand, if we think back about some of the grants that we've given in the last few years, who actually of that group who come together to do the application, who actually would have ended up paying? Like the riot one, who would have actually paid that 8%?
So whoever the applicant is, it would be, it's booked into the Go Virginia request. So.
Oh, it's part- oh, okay, okay, they don't pay up front. It's
No,
it's
no, no, no.
part
No.
of.
These are money
Okay.
Go
Okay.
Virginia funds.
Yeah, I don't follow.
Yeah, it comes out of our per capita budget.
How come we've never done it?
That's good. So, I mean, some of that predates me, or a lot of it does, but
So, Jason and I were on the executive council when we talked about this last time, or at least the time before, and at the time, we thought that we wanted to reserve as much as possible for granting out, and we didn't want to take that off the top. And I think at the time too, we understood from GWRC that they had the capacity to execute this. And I mean, it was recommended to us that, or at least we looked at it, but we did not adopt it because we wanted to preserve those funds for being granted.
For actual projects, and
actual
also we were
projects.
concerned about whether the admin fee would be split between applicants and the Go Virginia portion, and so increase the burden on applicants, which was already burdensome at that point.
so it does, though, I will say, since we are, you are increasing the Go Virginia request, you are increasing the match.
So what's the will of the board? Anybody wish to against a motion of adopting administrative fee policy? So moved.
Second.
Motion second on the floor, and discussion.
I do a quick scenario. At what point would you understand and let the applicant know what percentage would be a part of that? Is that like when they come to you and have it ready to go? Because I'm thinking about the match. So they've gone out, they've gotten the match, they're ready to go. They come to you and then you say, there's 4% more, are we gonna have to figure out where this comes from? Is that how that would happen, or?
Well, so we have that discussion, well, we have repeat applicants we have a good relationship
Yes.
with that understand that better. But folks that are new, like Jay in Northumberland, we have that discussion as soon as we talk to them.
Okay. Good.
So it is at the very beginning of the application process.
I think that's great, and I will go on record to say, I think it's absolutely worth it. We're doing a lot more now, I think also than we did initially to help the grantees, right? To think about what they're doing, so yeah, it's good.
Further comments, questions?
One quick clarification, Ron. When does it go into effect?
After you vote,
So does it affect all the applications behind it?
every application subsequent to your vote, yes, if you approve it.
If we approve today, it
Okay.
goes into effect with the next application comes in for.
Okay, thank you. That's
It goes into effect when the next application comes up at, well, it's past 210, but at 210.
Okay.
So it is built into the budget for the project.
Yeah.
This application.
That's why we have it.
So no surprises while our guests are sitting.
So good.
All right, we have a motion and second on the floor to adopt the administrative fee policy effective immediately. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries. Thank you. Okay. SCPS Adjacent Learning Igniting Entrepreneurship Appeal Letter.
Okay, so I'm gonna try to do this super quick. We had Abby online, if you guys, she is the applicant with Stafford County Public Schools for the project. We also, I think, have Jenna and Eleanor online, if you guys have any questions for them, but basically, we had a planning project that we approved at our October meeting. That was denied, so the applicant has requested that we go through the process to appeal that. So the process is, from the council's perspective, submitting this letter as a formal appeal, which will be in the state board's package for their meeting in March to potentially reconsider the project. I can't say whether or not they will do that, but that is the formal appeals process. The applicant can also submit written comment, which we provided them with the portal for that, and with any public meeting, they can show up and make a public comment in person.
Before we put a motion on the floor on this, any questions?
I have a question. I mean, was the basis, where are we on the basis for the denial? I mean, rather than just run it black out the flagpole, has there been any change made to the request, or do we think there's a change in the disposition of the state board that will make it successful this time? Like, what's the temperature?
It was denied administratively. not
Yeah,
by the
so,
state board.
since it was a planning grant, it was denied administratively.
Okay.
Still why? Reason. Happens.
Billy, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it was denied because you guys have an REI in place and it hasn't been finished. I mean, that was the crux of the issue. Also, you deal with middle school students for entrepreneurial activities. It's line of sight to landing, you know, some type of permanent credential or jobs would be very, very far away. I think we have more of an appetite and we have precedent for workforce development type projects because it's career exploration. But we view this different in terms of uses and space. And then, I mean, I think the main thing was the REI is just getting started, so.
Yes.
We've had precedent for other applications being denied, and I think we've come back and asked the applicant to redo something, to look at it again. Why would we not go back to them and just submit the same thing over again if nothing has fundamentally changed at the state board level? I know we approved it, so we liked the project, but.
Has there been anything that's changed with the application?
Well, I'll just say, I'll let you guys have that discussion. We have the applicant online if they would like to talk to it, but this is really just us following the formal appeals process on the request of the applicant.
We have no obligation to do it though. This is just our decision.
That's why this is an action item. And the letter serves as notification from you all that we are appealing. But that's why it is an action item. You can choose to approve it to or reject.
So it's a matter of just pushing the application back to the state board. Is that right? Is this going back?
So it would go to the state board. It's never been in front of the state board because all planning grants, unless they're over $100,000, are reviewed administratively by DHCD.
It is unlikely that staff would recommend approval or reversal of this.
Is there any opportunity for the applicant to revisit the application and kind of refine some of the points and concerns of the state staff before before we appeal? So that it is a stronger application, or do we just need to move it back through the process of with those changes and push it back to the staff?
So I'll yield to Abby if you want to chime in, or Eleanor or Jenna, if you think based on the recommendations that we provided you or the reasons as to why it was rejected, you all think that you could change the project or cater it so that it could potentially be approved.
Sure. Yeah. So thank you. I'm hearing bits and pieces. I'm sorry. The audio is coming in and out a little bit for me, but I think in general, our thought is that when you look at the goals of the funding and of the project, they're aligned. I think there's a little bit of a misunderstanding about how we get from point A to point B. And I think someone mentioned that the job creation component of this is kind of far off. Because we're talking about working with 9th through 12th graders. So we can certainly look to see if we can reword some of the language to make that case a little bit clearer. But when we talked, us and Jason and Jenna, feel free to jump in at any time. We felt like we had made that case and that maybe A second look by some different folks could potentially have a different outcome. But we're not, we absolutely can try to reword some of this to try to get at the same point. We probably would not include new or different metrics because we wouldn't be able to do that, right? And so then the funding doesn't help if we can't deliver on what we say. Jenna, do you have anything different or additional to add to that?
No, I have come to the same conclusion that you have, and after talking through it with Ian and Sarah, it seemed like we were pretty aligned with it. I think we have just finished up. We're actually having our meeting about pathways to success, and that was something they mentioned, was finishing up one grant to see if we would go for an implementation, which is definitely something that we're working on. We've already had meetings for, but it wasn't something that we could show in this application because it hadn't finished yet. And I know that was a talking point, but yeah, I'd be happy to adjust it if there were things that we could adjust that would make it more appealing and be able to get funded.
Any questions from the board members?
All you're asking for us is to determine if we're going to move forward with the appeal.
That's
it?
good. And is it your recommendation to move forward?
So you would be enabling the applicants to appeal the decision.
Yeah, I mean, like, so all your kids, so I do it.
Does the applicant appeal or do we appeal? Does Region 6 appeal? Who's the appeal come from? Seems like it comes from us, not the applicant.
Well, so you're really kind of doing this in support of the applicant. But really the applicant is the one who is formally appealed.
And so the applicant's asking for our support, or to support their appeal. Is that correct?
Correct. I mean, they can, as with any public meeting, they can go to the state board and bring it up. They can also submit a written comment.
They do not need our letter to initiate this appeal.
Appeal to you, well,
This was kind of uncharted territory.
that's exactly, yes, and that's why I don't have as many answers, because there's not, in the guidance, there's not, this is the appeals process, do X, Y, Z. So.
I'm wondering if you might want to modify the first sentence to say the Region 6 Council is writing to support an appeal.
Support an appeal.
You would support.
So I need to talk about team. I don't know if this would even go in front of, it will get, because it's administrative approval. So it would go back to DHCD. If we don't put stuff into the board until it's been administratively approved as an informational item. But I mean, we could certainly, we could work with the team and see if it's worthwhile doing a public comment at our upcoming March board meeting.
Jeremy, I have a question. So why would we have an appeal process if the staff's not going to move it to the board level? My point exactly. I mean, this should go to the board. The applicant's appeal should go to the board because the staff is denied something. It's kind of like going to the board of zoning appeals after the zoning administrator denies an application. And the zoning administrator doesn't get to kill the application the second time around, it has to go to the board of zoning appeals. So do we want to, go ahead.
Per your point, I suggest one more modification. Region 6 Council is writing to the state board to support an appeal of the DHCD staff's decision to deny.
We need to put this on hold until we get further clarification on what it exactly is that who we're appealing to, the process. Clarification.
I agree with Chairman's statement, but yes, I can go back. Let me get some clarification from our staff. I agree with the chairman's stance that if it hasn't changed, then what, I mean, if it came back to us, we'd have the same position on it. So I agree that it would make more sense to go to the state board, but let me get clarification and communicate that to Ian.
I take it you haven't seen one of these before. then.
So I'll just say, in terms of putting it on hold, one of the reasons we put it in this month's packet is because some of the programming has already been pushed out. So some of the planning from the school district's perspective has been pushed out. Actually, 3 school districts officially, but several more in the region. This won't even be contemplated until March. The executive committee could potentially approve it, but anyway, we'd be pushing it out potentially all the way to the summer state board meeting. So that's why that's the context for why it was included. I'm trying to not take a position. I'm trying to stay as diplomatic as possible. But
we do an electronic vote, or are we allowed to do an electronic vote, especially once we clarification?
no, we'd have to have an in-person forum.
Would this board be comfortable with the executive committee acting on it at the February meeting? Yes. We have clarification about how the appeals process works at the state level.
Yes.
Motion to that effect.
Now, and you're saying it may not, which I understand, it may not even be included in the state board packet at all. But we would need to get basically any kind of letter or anything that would be included in the state board packet would need to be there within like the first few days of February or.
No, we have time. We'd have time because we want to get, like, if it did go in the board packet, it's usually like the 3rd to last week of February when we kind of finalize everything. So you'd have to the end of February.
Okay, so we should be fine with the executive committee.
Yeah. With that said, is it possible that this board will trust the executive committee to hear this issue further? Once we get clarification, state as to whom we're appealing to, whether it's going to be the state board or to just the administrative staff, making a decision and then forwarding a letter on appeal on if it is truly going to be the state board. Are y'all comfortable with that?
I am, but isn't that what the executive committee's for? I mean, it will.
I just like to get all
in
the
the
board
bylaws,
members
isn't it?
engaged, well, because there may be different opinions.
I would be curious if you could see the denial letter so we know what we're supporting. I mean, I don't understand why they denied it. I don't really have a clear understanding of that. And if we could see the letter, there might be something in that letter that could also help us write a letter that would have a little bit, maybe possibly more.
The executive committee.
Yeah, the executive committee, right. And I have no trouble with the executive committee doing it.
Well, and I'll just say things that are denied or approved administratively, we get that in the form of an email, but we can, Sarah can forward basically what we forward to the applicant explaining why.
If I could just say one thing, the main thing though was, so you all approved a regional entrepreneur initiative plan, not that long ago. And that's kind of to map out your ecosystem and kind of figure out, what makes sense. This is where we are, this is where we want to go. And we thought that this was premature since that had just been approved.
Okay. Thank you.
Caveat, good point. We disagreed because similar to the Talent Pathways Initiative, we can't put workforce projects on hold. We kind of understand there are issues that we can continue to study, but that we already kind of understand. And the Regional Entrepreneurship Initiative didn't technically start until January 8th. We've done a decent amount of planning, so that was our perspective. I respect that point, but just respectfully disagreeing with that. That was our perspective. Putting entrepreneurship projects on hold and having to do everything in the context of the REI, which is a planning project that has just gotten underway. That was our reason.
Okay, thank you.
So Will I have a motion that this item be referred to the executive committee for action?
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? We will report back to you about where this is going, so that you're all aware of it. Okay, and this moves us into the application discussion and determination. And we have Jay Lightfoot from Northumberland County Schools Technical Applications Project with us, as well as one of his strong students. I was listening to the young man and his aspiration of what he wants to do, and very impressive. Yeah, Jay, if you would, please introduce your assistant there with you.
I'm gonna make him stand by himself, so he can't hide behind me. My name is Jay Lightfoot, and I'm a CTE instructor, career and technical education instructor, Northumberland High School. I'm also the CTE coordinator at Northumberland, so I coordinate the CTE program for our county.
And I am Gary Butler, the battalion commander of the Northumberland JROTC. Just here to help out pretty much.
Welcome.
So the other thing I'll tell you about Gary, he's probably too humble to tell you himself, every year our school as a senior, we select one outstanding student that represents our feeling, well, not our feelings, but who our school stands for and the things that we exemplify called pride, and we call that the Indian of the Year because we're the Northumberland Indians. Gary is our Indian of the Year. Small applause, please, for Gary. So Gary is our one student of the year. So he is our Indian. That was not intentional. He's been through several of my classes, but it just so happens that's the case. So we're going to talk about this project we call NTAP. We'll talk a little bit more about that, but it is part of the workforce development project, and we're here to give you an overview. I think you probably have the full application in your packets. Hopefully, didn't put too many of you to sleep along the way, but that's what we're going to talk about. So a little bit about what we're going to do today. We're going to talk a little bit about what NTAP is, a little bit about what the different components of it are, the phases of the program, in other words, how we see it working out, and how we move forward with you. So what's going on? So I'll have to tell you, I started thinking about this a couple years ago because I see a chasm in our educational system. I'm what they call a second career educator. I was in the IT world for about 30 years. I started when I was 12. I see a huge chasm we have, and part of the goal of this project is to close that chasm a little bit. And Gary's been in my classes off and on for a couple years, and I mentioned some of the ideas Gary in his classes. And with that said, I'm gonna let Gary tell you what his reaction was to what some of these ideas of this project are.
When I first heard about this entire project, I was like, wow, this could actually be a full-blown game changer for most of students now and for upcoming students and cadets. Like, this could bring so many more opportunities and ways of learning and thinking for many other students and cadets. And this would be great for everybody. For future leaders to people now that still are just trying to help out. This is great for everybody.
And a little bit of background on Northumberland County. I'm not sure if you know, but we're the county, you go that way, and if you hit the water, you've gone too far. My joke is we're the county where the sidewalk literally ends. But the thing about our county is it's kind of an interesting group, and then we've got a lot of retirees. So there's kind of this large disparity in income. So you've got a lot of people, the retirees that are relatively wealthy to do well, and then we've got a lot of people that are at or below the poverty level. In fact, in our school, between 35 and 40% of our students qualify for free lunch. So it's an interesting dynamic from that perspective, but we do have a large percentage of our population that are low income. And that's one of the things we're looking at doing with this is to encourage some of those underserved populations. So what is NTAP? To begin with, it is, we call it the Northern Neck Technical Applications Program. That's what NTAP is. I'm a computer guy, so you gotta have an acronym for everything. It is a 2-year program that has encouraged STEAM skills. When I say STEAM, science, technical, engineering, arts, and math. That's what we call STEAM. It used to be STEM, now we added the A. But it's to encourage more and more students to take STEM courses in our classes. And there were 2 components of this. Number one is to establish the drone soccer program in Virginia, and also to establish some internships. So those are the 2 components of this particular class, and that is it. And it is also a consortium of 4 different school systems. So it's ourselves, it's Essex, it's Gloucester, and Smithfield. So we are the 4 counties that will participate in it.
one thing about this entire multi-county project is that not only does his classes just help out with people who learn valuable skills like I have, but it teaches you hands-on skills. So once you do get out of high school, you actually have the working abilities to learn and keep going and improve as you go.
So what's the need for TAP? Why do we think TAP is important? Why do we think it's something that's gonna be important? Well, number one, the Northern Neck is largely an agriculture and blue collar area, as we all know. There's a person of a fisherman down there. We have a lot of fishermen in our area, okay? It is largely a blue collar and that area. The opportunities that we are offering in our area are not keeping pace with the things we're teaching our students. We're teaching our students very high-tech skills. I'm teaching students how to build websites. I'm teaching students how to rebuild computers. I'm teaching students how to fly drones. Another person is teaching them how to do robotics. There just are no applications for those skills in the workforce for high school students right now. So that's one of the chasms we're going to joke or try to, cross here. The other thing is the large growth areas in the U.S. economy and IT and other things are not being addressed by our local opportunities offered high school students. So that's one of the things we're trying to do, encourage more people to get these skills and get these summer jobs. And students need more outlets for their skills. Realistically, I think over the last 5 or so years, our school system, other school systems have kind of upped our games. We realize you have to teach these students these skills now and get them introduced. And we really need a way to encourage them to use those skills out in the workforce as soon as we can. So the technical foundation of what we're talking about doing exists now. We have the classes. We're not talking about implementing new classes. We're not talking about hiring new teachers. We have the classes. We have the students. We're just talking about bridging the gap and going from there. The other thing that's important is that most of these classes are dual enrollment and they get college credit and they all have a credential associated with them. They're all CTE courses. And I notice as I'm talking about dual enrollment, she's leaving the room.
I'm so sorry.
We are working with RCC, and I'm able to commit to this before she leaves. Our new courses, the
I'll be in the
robotics
building.
course and the drone course will make them dual enrollment. They're not dual enrollment right now, but we've been struggling with RCC to make those dual enrollment. But all of these courses most of them are dual enrollment, but they all have credentials. You talked about credentials earlier. All of our CTE courses have credentials associated with them. You want to talk about your 107?
Yeah, I've worked, let's say, 2 semesters, right? Yeah. Just to work towards a 107, which is a piloting license for drones, where I can become paid to fly or do anything that deals with drones. And now that I have it, I can't really find as many places as I actually want to that deals with what I worked hard for. Like, there's not many places you can find that deals with drones and the technological advances that I actually work for near me. They're all very far off, and I have to travel far off just to be able to actually get it. And that's why I actually want this, because it will actually help me out and many of the other people that work for the 107 to bring it near us, and then we'll actually have something better to work towards.
Go to FAA 107 at the pilot side. So component number one. Component number one of the INSET program is drone soccer. Drone soccer, not sure if you've ever heard of drone soccer. It's an international sport. It was founded in Korea many years ago, but what they were finding is that we were teaching kids to fly drones, but there was no competitive outlet for it. What do you do with those skills besides get your 107? So it's a competitive outlet sport. International, there are regional and national competitions for drone sports. Drone sports headquarters in America right now is in Colorado. So most of it's in Colorado. There's some things that happen in New Jersey, Pennsylvania. Guess what? Nothing in Virginia. We would be the first drone soccer league in the state of Virginia. And if you've never seen drone soccer, it's kind of like Angry Jellyfish. It's really kind of fun. The emphasis in drone soccer is on flying, teamwork, problem solving, and others. If you Harry Potter, if you remember Harry Potter, Quidditch, it's kind of like Quidditch with little drones, with exoskeletons, right? That's kind of what it's like. And there's 3 periods, and there's 5 on a team. And if you damage one of your drones, you're down a person for that period. But between periods, you can go get your drone and you can fix it. Problem solving, you work together and fix it and get it flying again. A lot of really interesting applications for drone soccer, not only from a skill standpoint, but from teamwork, problem solving, and other things. You want to say something about drone soccer?
drone soccer, I believe, would actually help out with major skills that most people nowadays do not have. Communication is one of the biggest things. I even had a hard time dealing with communications. And then when I started dealing with like fun games with people, it actually improved it. And I didn't even realize it until later on throughout my life. Like right now, I wouldn't be able to do this last year. I wouldn't be able to stand in front of people and actually speak up. And now I'm actually doing that due to this man right here.
And your willingness to move forward. Oh, yeah. And again, the nice thing about drone soccer is there is an existing drone skills course that's taught. DOE released it last year. We were one of 20 high schools that started it during the last school year, 22-23. Now there are over 30 schools in the state of Virginia that are teaching the drone skills course. So the nice thing about drone soccer is there is a ready pool of students that have the skills that can participate in this. So it's not like we're going to teach a bunch of new students new things. It is out there, and this class is out there, and it's just a way of applying those skills for them. So that's drone soccer. Second part of this is the intern program. We want to do a local intern program. The concept behind the local intern program, really a summer intern program, is this fund or this grant will fund half of the cost of the interns, and the local businesses and partnerships we have will fund the other half. So we'll kind of go halfies, as I said. We pay for half, they pay for half. And the skills are going to be technical. There's an emphasis on technical skills. If you want to hire one of these interns, you will agree to commit to use their technical skills. Robotics, drones, computers, websites, one of those areas. That's what you're going to have these people do, or these students do during the summer, is build upon their existing technical skills that they learned in the classroom. Year number one, our plan is to have 12 interns in Northumberland, NOCO, we affectionately call it NOCO County, and Lancaster, our two local counties. The idea is to start small, figure out what we don't know, and then go from there. Year 12 or year 12, that'll be an interesting project. Year 2, 24 interns split across Northumberland, Lancaster, Gloucester, Essex, and Smith. So that's the way we tend to do it. Year 1, we're going to primarily fund drone soccer and 12 interns. Year 2 will be more interns. Okay, so probably less of an emphasis on drone soccer during year 2, more internships. Okay, key partner with this is the local Boys and Girls Club, and I specifically mention them because they're real interesting. Not sure if you're familiar with the Boys and Girls Club, but they provide after-school and summer programs for underprivileged children in our area. More than just babysitting. They do a lot of work with them, and they've agreed to be one of our partners and to offer a robotics and a drone component to their summer program. So what that means is I'm going to have students like Gary teaching the next generation of students drones and robotics. So I'm actually encouraging the next generations, 5, 6, 17-year-olds, to come in and take these classes. Hey, I can do this. I can do this. I want to be a big kid like this, right? That's the beauty of, I think, working with the Boys and Girls Club, is it kind of helps perpetuate a cycle of I can take these courses. And what I'm looking for is I'm looking for a scenario when these students hit high school, they come to me and say, Mr. Lightfoot, I want to take your course. I want to take your courses. You know, so it's not only the opportunity to get a good job, but it's the opportunity of building the skills because they've had that opportunity at the Boys and Girls Club. So that's the nice thing about the partnership with the Boys and Girls Club. And to be honest with you, the Boys and Girls Club has told me as many as interns as we can fund, they'll hire. So half and half. They've got the funds, they've got the partnerships, and I've said, wait, we can't do too many initially. But they're very excited about doing this. And this is a great opportunity. It's not only in Northumberland, but Lancaster. Their main headquarters is in Lancaster. They're also talking about maybe Richmond County too. So they're a great project, or they're a great partner for us. So how do the two parts work together? There are two different parts of the program. I think number one, they build complementary skills. The skills we're talking about building across both of them are the same. They're leveraging our technical skills we're teaching them in the classroom. The other thing is that both fill a gap in STEM education or STEAM education. So the internships certainly help us with an application during the school or during the summer. And I think drone soccer provides a competitive outlet for us. Robotics has competitive outlets now. Beta offers some competitive outlets. Dahlgren across the way has some robotics competitions. There's nothing like that in the world of drones right now. NASA does some stuff, but the problem with some of the stuff that NASA is doing is it's not real friendly from a spectator standpoint. Drone soccer, it's like a basketball game. You get people come in, and it's a great spectator sport. So it fills a gap in our education, and the kids can actually use these skills competitively, and kids love to compete. Let's face it, kids, high school students. All right, and it provides unique workforce development opportunities to apply the skills you learn in the classroom. That to me is a big thing. Let's give them opportunities to apply the skills they're learning in the classroom, and it encourages underserved populations. You know, a lot of our population, as I said, is below the poverty level. And I think a lot of these kids come to school thinking, I can't do this. You know, I'm just gonna go to school and do the minimum I gotta do to get out of here. I'm hoping to change the mindset. Let's change the mindset and say, you know, you can do these things. You can program robots, you can fly drones. Sure, we'll get you going with that. And further opportunity for engagement with the community. Not only with the local businesses with internships, because I'm trying to change the perspective of the local internships. So I think a lot of the local businesses, when they look at Gary, they're like, oh, you can stock shelves or maybe wait tables or bus tables. No. He can fly drones and he can build robots. You know, so I'm trying to really change the mindset there. The other thing with drone soccer being a good spectator sport, people will come out. I mean, trust me, if you ever seen drone soccer, it is entertaining. It is entertaining. And it's a good opportunity to cheer for non-normal, how did I say it best? The students who will play drone soccer are not the people playing football or basketball. It's kind of a different population of students that I think are going to participate in drone soccer. So it gives a whole new group of students the opportunity to compete and have people cheer for them. You want to say something to that, or I'm sorry, I'm probably wrong.
Basically just, it explores more interest in just athletics or anything else. This one actually opens up other opportunities for like minorities inside of schools and other opportunities for other people just to have fun and sit back and watch.
There you go. This one.
And then internship impacts. It could, right at the moment, I could do retail hospitality jobs, something easy that's near me. But in the future, I could actually be helping teaching others, using leadership to my advantage, and helping teach people about leadership and teach them that anything is possible if you put your mind to it. And then we have drone soccer impacts. Enhanced teamwork is one fundamental life value I've learned can go a very long way. It is a very big life skill that not many people have. Communication skills is one important thing that's very necessary for anybody, but not many people still have it today because they're shy. Anxiety will hit them, and they will try and stay inside a little turtle shell. And then we have hands-on learning. Not many courses can give you this, and I've learned every single hands-on course I've ever had has taught me so much more than any lecturing or any paperwork that I could ever have. This has taught me the most, and it's just pure awesomeness. Tap to your inner geekness and just help yourself to fly a drone when we have it.
And the other commitment that I'll make to you is that if this board moves forward with this, if you want to come to the drone soccer game between the games, we'll let you get out and fly one of the drones in the arena. So if you want to see the difficulty of doing this, I mean, I would never admit this in public. I'll tell anybody who said this. These guys, they're better pilots than I am. I have my 107 license, but they grew up in a world of gaming and all, and their eye-hand coordination is a lot better than mine is. And so they're really, really good at this. It's a little intimidating. I'm like, oh yeah, good job. Wish I could do that. But there is also a hyperlink here to a video on drone soccer. I don't know if you want to see, there's a 2-minute video on, it's a promo for drone soccer.
Can we do it later?
Yeah, it's in your application too. It's in your application, it's out there, but there's like a 2-minute promotional video for drone soccer too. All right, so phases of NTEC, what we're talking about. So year one, 2024, this year, starting this summer, we're gonna establish the Eastern Virginia Drone Soccer League. That's probably in the fall. We probably won't do anything with that until the fall because we can't do anything this year, this school year. But we will establish the 12 summer internship programs for this summer. So we'll do that primarily in Northumberland and Lancaster. In year two, 2025, we will continue to support drone soccer as we need, a little bit of money in there for that. But then we're going to establish 24 technical internships amongst the other counties. And we'll share them with the other counties depending on what the needs are. Along with Gloucester and Essex are bigger than we are. They probably won't have as much of a problem with internships. So we'll get it going from there. So conclusion. It is a unique opportunity for workforce development. Again, I think it bridges that chasm we have between what we're teaching in the classroom and applications that they can use with their summer jobs. So I think that's a huge win for everybody. It will help change hearts and minds in our area. Again, I want people to look at Gary and say, what else can you do besides stock ships? You know, so in all our students, I think, you know, and it encourages students to take these courses. But I want students to come to me and say, I want to take your courses and learn these things because I want to get a good job learning something. I'm okay with that. Okay with that scenario, I think that's something we just don't have right now. And it will provide additional outlets for STEAM skills, which we don't currently have, and the existing foundation is there. We have it, classes are there, the skills are there. Let's move forward. Questions? Yes, ma'am.
In the beginning, you said that, in your region, you face the problem of the great job you're doing training students to use some of the advanced technologies. And yet there aren't local jobs for them to then go get. They have to leave the region in order to use their skills. How does this address that problem?
So I think it addresses it in a couple of different ways. So I think one of which is, I think, as I said, changing the hearts and minds of some of the employers locally. I know like one of our largest employers is Omega Protein, Ocean Harvesters. They've played with drones a little bit in the past, but I don't think they take them real seriously right now. But I think doing this sort of thing and having more opportunities and training more students, maybe, and I continue to talk to them about some of the things we can do, I think it will change their hearts and minds in the long term. The other thing that we're seeing is, I don't know if you saw, one of the support letters we have is from the local Realtor Association. 5 years ago, less than 5% of the houses that were for sale had drone photography. Now you're seeing 50 to 60% of them. And I have one person locally who flies drones for real estate photography. So it'd be great to have students like Gary start their little businesses on the side. But again, I think that's an iterative thing. We need to give them more opportunities and encourage more people to go out there and do those, take the classes and build the skills and go from there. I think there's a lot of other different ways, but I just think waking our community up, getting more people engaged in what we're doing, getting more small businesses in to hire some of these kids to I keep saying kids because they're kids to me, to use some of the robotic skills and the drones and that sort of thing. I think starts building a mindset and maybe starts building more of a receptive to, hey, maybe we should do this. Another little factoid I'll tell you that's kind of funny. Our local sheriff, Johnny Beecham, he has his FA 107 certificate. He's a professional pilot. You ask him why he has him. He says, well, drones are coming, public law enforcement. He sees a situation in the near future where he's going to have to hire a drone pilot, to do not only, work with the police department, but also some of the local fire departments. So this stuff is coming. But again, what I'm trying to build is build more of a skill base and, encourage kids to go out and do stuff outside the classroom. Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about just a short bit about the businesses? Are they mostly small businesses? I'm assuming they are, except for the large manufacturer you just mentioned.
So, in our area, absolutely small businesses. The vast majority of our businesses in our area. Most of the people I'm having right now with the internships that I'm seeing that are signed up are associations, like probably the school system will hire 1 or 2 interns for an IT side, Boys and Girls Club. There's some other organizations. But it's also, this is a scenario where it's kind of like a chicken and the egg scenario, where I think once we get the grant, I'll have some more people come in. But it is small businesses. There's one gentleman near us that owns a company called Salty Stitches that also builds websites. So he would be a good candidate too, to hire one of our people. So I think there are small businesses right now, but I think with our community, we're such a small community, when word gets out that this is happening, I think people, and we have a Chamber of Commerce. I know the people in the Chamber of Commerce too. That'll be another, entree.
So just a small quick comment. First of all, excellent job. Thank you both. Thank you. And when I see you, I think of all kinds of different jobs in addition to what you're doing. So that's a good thing. I do want to make the board aware that, again, I would mention VTOP, which is for higher ed, it's for small business, but it does not cover. So what I want to focus us on, we need to partner. So we have funds for small businesses to pay for half or all of an internship. This would fall within that category, provided that it's a small business and that small business completes the workshop that's available to them. Have you met Antoinette Jenkins?
I have not. And my only concern there, so one of our larger ones is Boys and Girls Club, and I don't think they've.
It doesn't, no. And so that's the one recommendation that I would have, is just to, on the internship, like the support, that it would kind of not overlap with what VTOP is doing, because we have funds available to do that, and a person here ready to do that with you. And so I think it's a great idea.
So the VTOP may be another project. Yes, that's the mesh, yes.
That would knock out some of the
because your VTOP is state.
Because VTOP is state. And here in my couple.
Yeah.
Let's call it an opportunity. Yes, sir.
Not for you. Are you familiar with VIPSI, Virginia Innovation Corporation?
I've heard of it. That's probably my level of
CIT technology, and we give up money for it.
Center for Innovative Technology in
I'm on
Virginia.
board, but we have a huge drone program with startup companies in the drone space. And they actually operate a lot of their events down at Newport News at the port. Because they're applying them there to port security.
Yeah.
So
you're saying we should invite you to all the matches of drone soccer?
you should talk to me. I'll get you in touch with the VIPSI people. But the other thing is, we were talking about industries locally using it. Fishing is starting to use it. And all of those, agriculture is starting to use it with a variety of sensors to see whether they have enough fertilizer or water or whatever. So I think it's a great idea.
We have one of our large local farmers would probably partnership with this too, so he would help us along the way, I think, too. You're right, agriculture is huge.
Yeah, but I need your card.
Oh, I think I've got one.
Give me on the way out.
Yeah, there you go. All right.
So I have a question about the internship, because you said that most of the students in your school district or in these 4 areas are on free or reduced lunch, so economically challenged there. How are they getting these jobs? Is that part of this proposal? Is that would be covered, or?
It would not be there, but the one thing I've seen about our community, if I can be so bold, and Gary, stop me if I'm wrong, we figure these things out. If the opportunity is there, if we have a young person who is willing to work and needs transportation, either people in the business help them or other their neighbors help them, because pretty much a lot of our people work.
Yeah.
So if I'm coming from Reedville, which is at the end of the sidewalk, and I know that, Gary's got a job in Callio, which is the other end of the county, and I have to go by his house, I'm gonna stop in the morning and pick him up, he's gonna ride with me. That sounds funny, but that's the way our community works. So I think for us, we tend to figure these things out. There's not a lot of mass transit. I mean, Bay Transit is one, but I think where there's a will, I mean, am I wrong, do you think? Yeah, we figured the transportation out.
Time for one final question, because there's a tour starting as part of tomorrow.
Sure.
I guess I was on the group that looked at this application when Jay brought it, and we were in Valfolds. Now we were supportive of it. Part of our initial concerns of connect the dots between drone soccer to internships to workforce development. And I think we did that today, Jay. I think there is a continuum there. It is sort of hard because it's sort of a nascent technology that we know will have future application. We're just not quite sure where yet. I do think that for our area, and also the Boys and Girls Club has satisfied that transportation issue in our area too. They're good at that.
Yeah, I think we can figure that out. Yeah, I agree. Well, and that's the thing. If you look at the technologies we're looking at, computer technologies and all, that's pretty mature. We know what that is. We know that robotics has been around a little while. That's why you see the competitions you see in the robotics and other things. That's been around longer. The drones are newer, and that's kind of a newer technology. And as I've told Gary and other people in my classroom, this is a unique opportunity for their generation to be on the ground floor. And that's one of the reasons I want to fund drone soccer, because it's new and interesting, and it really leverages it where there's a vacuum in that space, right? So I think it's a great opportunity for all of us.
Sarah, we have one additional comment from board member online, is that correct?
Oh, no,
Nope.
I don't believe so. It just popped up there. No.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't see a hand up.
All right, Ian, this application has been reviewed by the committee. It's recommended by the committee. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so do I hear a motion that the application for Northumberland County Schools Technical Application Project be approved? I'll make that. Thank you, Rob, the second. Any discussion? Any questions? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll go with that application. Okay.
Thank you, Gary, for running.
Thanks, Gary.
We've got 2 other items on the agenda. For your information, if you want to highlight those.
I'm just gonna, I don't even know what they are, honestly.
It's just the project update and the.
Yeah, it's just, I skipped that. Just update for state board, 2 projects we had going for the state board in December were approved. So that's Aquaculture 2.0, Virginia Tech, Chesapeake Bay Governor's School, partnering with Eastern Shore on that. Region 5 generally, that's a statewide competitive project. And then Shannon, she's not here, but her project proposal for the diesel mechanic training center, thanks Jay, was also approved. So we can skip everything else. We kind of talked about everything.
All right, yeah. Yes. Thank you. So, you're very much. So, all in favor? Thank you.